Today we're going to be talking about how disparagement humor permits unsafe COVID-19 behaviors. Unsafe in this context refers to any behavior that goes against CDC recommendations. So first, what is disparagement humor? This is defined as humor that denigrates or belittles its target. This can include sexist humor, racist humor, anti-gay humor, anything along those lines. So when we talk about COVID-19 disparagement humor, we're referring to humor that diminishes the severity of COVID-19, such as these memes at the bottom here. We're working from prejudice norm theory, which posits that disparagement humor activates a local norm of tolerance for suppressed behavior, which in turn allows people so inclined to engage freely in those behaviors within that immediate social context. A good visual representation here. If you imagine that everything within this circle, this white circle here, is socially acceptable behavior, and everything outside is unacceptable, such as committing violence, tolerating discrimination, actually discriminating. Disparagement humor has a way of expanding that socially acceptable behavior to include those things that are normally suppressed behaviors. With that in mind, we have three hypotheses. First, humor disparaging COVID-19 signals a local norm of tolerance for unsafe pandemic behaviors, such as not wearing a mask. Number two, that local norm will in turn foster greater personal tolerance for unsafe pandemic behaviors. And lastly, we expect that perceived threat of COVID-19 will moderate this relationship, such that only those who do not view COVID-19 as a threat will use that norm to inform their behavior. Those high in threat should not be affected by that local norm. Here's a visual representation of that model. On the left side here, we have hypothesis 1, and the other two hypotheses are represented on this line on the right. From late March to late April of 2021, we surveyed 5 communities on Reddit. These can best be interpreted as 3 non-skeptic groups and 2 skeptic groups as far as COVID-19 is concerned. We ended data collection in late April due to the CDC loosening their restrictions. We told participants they were completing 2 unrelated studies. The first was the social attitude survey, in which we assessed their perceived threat of COVID-19 and collected demographic and political affiliation information. And the second was the role play study, in which participants read 3 short vignettes in the context that they were getting breakfast with some friends before church. The first vignette was just a filler to distract from the true purpose of the study. The second vignette was sharing memes. These friends were sharing memes that either made fun of COVID or they were unrelated to COVID. And the third vignette included a norm violation. You can see that full vignette there. The gist of it is that a woman calls out a usher for not being concerned about a couple not wearing masks in this church. And so they respond to this question down here, as well as to a similar question assessing how they think their breakfast group would respond to this situation. The results of a moderated mediation analysis confirmed our hypotheses. Participants perceived a greater local norm of tolerance for unsafe behavior when the breakfast group shared COVID disparaging humor as opposed to neutral humor. And as participants saw a stronger norm of tolerance, their personal tolerance increased as well. As expected, there was an interaction such that the local norm only led to more personal tolerance for those that don't view COVID as a threat. Those that do view COVID as a threat were unaffected by the local norm. Because past research demonstrates that the social setting influences disparagement humor's impact on the local norm, we explored how the different Reddit communities responded to the humor. Consistent with past research, the COVID disparagement humor only strengthened the local norm for the non-skeptic samples. The local norm of the skeptic samples was unaffected by this humor. This makes sense, as the behavior measured here is not suppressed in these skeptic communities, and thus does not require humor's permissive influence. In conclusion, by influencing perceptions of the local norm, humor that belittles COVID-19 permits tolerance of unsafe behaviors. This suggests that prejudice norm theory is a valid framework for understanding COVID-19 humor, and so we might anticipate similar results, such that such humor permits actual engagement in these behaviors. Subversive COVID humor is likely to backfire and permit these behaviors, and censorship of this type of humor is not likely to be an effective strategy due to rebound effects and backfire effects. Thank you.